Uh, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. First couple of slides are just introductory, and if this webinar is like others in the series, we'll hopefully have a few more joining us. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll pop over into the presentation. There we go. So I'm Keith Landa. My home campus is Purchase College, where I'm director of the Teaching and Learning Technology Center, but I'm currently doing a lot of work for SUNY. And Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian Cepuran. I'm the VP of D2L Labs at D2L.
So we're going to, this is not going to be an exhaustive list of tools that you could use to help design and develop your course, but I did want to have one session during this workshop series which is focused on us as faculty. I mean, we had a lot on syllabus statements, and there's a lot of concern about academic integrity and so forth, but there are lots of tools that we can actually use to help us in our work. And so Brian and I will look at some different ways we can use different AI tools to help brainstorm around the overall design of our courses, putting together learning outcomes. I think there's a lot of busy work help we can get out of AI systems for developing question banks and going through formative assessments, lesson planning, developing rubrics, tools for research. All these are ways that some of these new tools can help us. And I will encourage everyone to please go ahead and use the chat to discuss these topics as we're going through. I think we're in early stages, and none of us are necessarily experts. And so crowdsourcing ideas about how these tools can make our lives easier as faculty is useful. Before we get started, just a little bit of background about the work group. First of all, if you're not familiar with FACT2, it's Faculty Advisory Council on Teaching and Technology. It is an advisory group to the system provost, providing feedback, perspectives, advice on topics around teaching, especially teaching with technology. And one of the things that FACT2 does is to establish one or more task groups each year to look at a particular topic. Oftentimes these are technology related. I've been on task groups around e-portfolios or adaptive learning systems. There's a recent task group on virtual reality and augmented reality. There's another work group going on right now about how to use the learning object repository in Brightspace. With ChatGPT hitting the public consciousness in fall of 2020, it's clear that this was going to be a game changer. So about May or June 2023, FACT2 established this AI task group. I won't give you the whole long name, but it's essentially how is AI going to impact teaching and learning? And given the given how important it is to get help to faculty as soon as possible, this work group actually spent a lot of time that first summer, which is not normally the case, scrambling to put together a version 1.0 of a guide for AI in teaching and learning that was distributed out to all of our campuses last fall. The group's continuing its work. There's a subcommittee updating that guide. It's kind of tripled it in size. There's a group that is developing a website where we can collect resources around AI and teaching and learning from across all of our campuses. There's another group working on, has planned a symposium, a one-day symposium, which you can participate in person at University of Buffalo. This is associated with the SUNY Conference on Instruction and Technology that will be taking place at the end of May at University of Buffalo. So May 21st is the symposium. You can sign up for free to attend virtually, or if you're going to be at CIT, or if you're in the Buffalo area and you want to stop in person, there's a small fee for to cover, some breakfast and lunch during the day. This webinar series has been sponsored by the Faculty Development Subcommittee, and we're now to the 5th week, and it's been a great series of webinars. We'll get the slides and recording of this out to everyone, as well as all of the recordings for all the sessions are up on the CPD YouTube site, and we can distribute that information out as well. So Brian, I think it's over to you.
Yes. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about today is using generative AI to help develop learning outcomes. So we know that this is something that is time consuming. Oftentimes, we know that it can help to provide structure and like guidance to the how a course gets developed, but it's oftentimes not something that is good that people are really keen on doing, and large language models can really help in this regards. Um, some of the things that we've found through our own exploration and experimentation is that some models are able to apply specific taxonomies to the result, to what you're trying to generate. Right. For instance, Bloom's taxonomy is something that we've seen support for in multiple different LLMs, like for instance from OpenAI and from Anthropic. Presumably, you might be able to use other ones, such as the structure of observed learning outcomes or taxonomy of significant learning. Really, something that you'd have to try and see if it works. As a bare minimum, you can get away with just using basic course information, like just using a course name, if it's a well-known course. If you have a description, say from a course catalog, or if you just have a description that you like to use for a course, that certainly can help yield better results. You can use those large language models to generate like the high level course level outcomes, or you can also do it to kind of tailor it to more fine grained learning outcomes that are sort of that might comprise that larger course level outcome. It's important to note that the large language model will pretty much always provide results, but they may not be particularly relevant or well aligned. And especially if you aren't providing enough specific details. And then you should also expect hallucinations. Please make sure that you are checking the results for accuracy, because again, the large language models will respond. They will respond incorrectly, and they will quote unquote believe that it is 100% accurate. And they may apologize if you point out that it's incorrect, but still, the point is that there will be times where it doesn't work out. On the next slide, I give a couple of examples, and the third example is actually in the notes of this slide. So that's something that we'll share out after, because it's a little bit more involved. So these are sort of like a progressively more complex prompt that I'm using here. And in all cases, I'm doing this for for an introduction to microeconomics course, which I've highlighted in sort of purple text in the two prompts that you see here. And you'll see, so in the first case, really kind of going pretty basic, just giving it a name. The second example is providing a little bit more context. So it can help to get better results if you provide a role and a goal for the large language model. So here I'm saying, you are a skilled instructional designer, well versed in identifying course level outcomes. It can also help to be supportive. I'll use air quotes, supportive. Right, so I'm telling the large language model here to, before you begin your response, you'll take a deep breath and think through your response step by step. People aren't really clear why that works, but researchers have shown that there was an improvement by including a statement like that in the prompt. But a key thing here is I am asking the large language model to do some processing first. So this thinking through step by step, I'm going to ask it to generate an appropriate course description. and then use that as part of the response for for providing me those learning objectives or learning outcomes. And so now let me switch over. I've got these prompts. I've already run them, but I've got them available in both Gemini and ChatGPT. And I just need to. Where is my? Okay, let's share the desktop then. Okay, so here I have it in Gemini, the first example. So I have, please identify useful learning objectives for the course, Introduction to Microeconomics. And it's provided me, it's structured the data, sort of its response in interesting ways, right? So here we've got high level, foundational concepts, and it talks about the underlying pieces. You'll see that it's sort of a mix of how good of an actual course outcome. That same prompt in ChatGPT is a little bit more concise. So I haven't used Gemini a lot. With ChatGPT, it can help to end off your prompt with what is intended to be the start of the response. So here we have ChatGPT for this simple prompt has come back with a set of 10 different course outcomes. Now, if we go to take it a step further, right? So I showed you the progression of the prompts. So in this more verbose example, right? So this is that same one I showed you. That was option number 2. It provided a course description. And then it started to provide a set of course level outcomes, a little bit more concise, and whether or not they're better. I'm not an expert in microeconomics. I just like to use that course as a sample. But you see that you get different results, right? And similarly in ChatGPT, it goes through and it gives you a course description. When working with a large language model, it can help sometimes to have it provide reasoning or an explanation. And in this case, that course description is, in my view, is a bit of an explanation. Because if it's giving you a bad description, then it's certainly going to give you bad outcomes. So you can use that as an interim step to say, like, is this aligned with what you're trying to achieve with your prompt? And so again, we have it gives us a number of results for that. Then I had mentioned that I had a more complex one. And so this is an example of a prompt where I've put more information in. And specifically, I've put in information around, I've given an example of how it should expect input from me. So here I've provided a bit of a structure, and I said there's a course name. Here I'm doing Psychology 101, and I've provided a course description. This course description I actually had ChatGPT generate for me, so that because I didn't have one handy. But then I also go in and I say, I tell it that the above example is to let it, is to set an expectation for the data input. Again, I'm telling it to go step by step and take a deep breath. And then I get into the portion of the prompt where I'm actually trying to tell it this is what I want it to respond based on. So I've denoted it with these triple quotes, and I have my course name, I have my course description, and then I ask it to come up with learning outcomes. And here it's broken it down by the type of outcomes. So knowledge and understanding versus critical thinking and problem solving, communication skills. And again, it's providing those example learning outcomes. I did the same thing in ChatGPT, and again, a more concise response where it's just focused on learning outcomes. So and it provides here in this case 8 examples. It's good to know that the different language models will respond differently to the exact same prompt. So if you get good results in one, it may not necessarily translate into others.
Yeah, I actually like using multiple different options because it's nice to compare the output from the different systems. So, what I want to do, and maybe I won't pop into full screen mode here. I think people can see this. What I want to do is show another approach at getting information about course organization and outcomes through a more specialized tool. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, these are all kind of general purpose large language models, but we're seeing built on top of that platform more and more specialized applications. And early in the work that we were doing for the FACT2 task group, I came across this almanac.ai site that intrigued me, and I've been playing around with it a little bit. You can basically give this system a course name, a course topic, and then the level that you want it pitched at, and it will come back with a series of units that could make up that course, lessons and lesson plans within each of those units, as well as opportunities to develop different kinds of resources. Although I'll have a caveat about that down the road. Again, what Brian has shown you and what I'm showing you, I think we should think of these as brainstorming aids. We're nowhere near the point where we have to worry about AI teaching our courses because well, I'll show you in a minute. But I think this kind of iterated process with Almanac in particular, you have the AI generate materials, you add to it, you rearrange things, you regenerate, and you can work toward the output that you want to get. And so let me just show you a little bit about Almanac. I'm going to go to the courses section first. It's just if you go to almanac.ai, you can create a login. So I'm teaching a Search for Life in the Universe course this summer. I'm going to be back in the classroom for the first time in a number of years. And this is a freshman level college course. It's for non-majors. It's a gen ed course. And so I just basically gave Almanac, okay, astrobiology for freshman level college, non-majors, and it came up with these units. So introduction to astrobiology, origin of life, habitable zone, extreme life forms, the Drake equation, astrobiology and exoplanets, a huge topic right now. So as an expert in teaching Search for Life in the Universe, I mean, many of these units would be units that I would want to use, but others are missed. I tend to focus much more. This seems much more of a course that is focused on looking for life beyond our solar system, because it's got this focus on the Drake equation, looking at exoplanets and SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. I mean, I do look at that material, but it's in the third kind of major section. I spend a lot more time looking at search for life in our solar system, what's going on with Mars and icy moons. And I noticed down here, buried in this astrobiology and space exploration, are two lessons that would be basically major units in my course. So again, it's kind of a brainstorming aid, but I want to drill down a little bit here. So let's just go into Introduction to Astrobiology. If you look at the lessons it has developed, it's got Search for Extraterrestrial Life. And if we look at that, you can see that it comes up with a set of learning objectives. That you can edit. You can take these as a starting point and so forth. But if we go back here and look at the lessons, I'd probably want to have a initial lesson that says, what is astrobiology? So I can just add that manually. What is astrobiology? And it will create a lesson. It will, I can have it plan this lesson. It will generate learning outcomes. You can create a lesson plan that goes along with this lesson. By default, it will use a backward design approach to developing those learning outcomes, um, or that lesson plan. But there are others. So there is the 5E model, or there's understanding by design, or differentiated instruction, which will give you content, process, product, so forth. So depending on what kind of instructional design approach you want to use, I'll just start with backwards design. You can add those headings. It will, process through and come up with, this is one issue with doing a live demo rather than a stage live demo, but under desired results, students will do this. Under assessment evidence, here, classroom discussion, written reflections, debate activities, and so forth. So, this is a tool you might be interested in using. I will just say that there are some pros and cons of these special purpose tools. It's a rapidly changing landscape. When I first came across Almanac, this was a totally free service, putting down to creating resources for the class. So based on a particular lesson plan, you can have it figure out what would be appropriate material and create an initial slide deck for you to customize, or worksheets or quizzes. But you'll notice that since it came out, a lot of these are now labeled pro. And we won't show any pro level things in the workshops because, the idea is not to make everyone go out and spend money, but this is a rapidly changing landscape. Like I say, I think it's a great way to maybe jumpstart your process. And okay. So let's see, anything in the chat that we need to address right now. So let me go on and kick off our next section of what we want to cover today, and that is developing question banks, at least from my perspective. Yeah, I went for decades without asking a single multiple choice question because I thought, well, multiple choice questions aren't a good assessment strategy. But when in recent years, I've focused a little bit more and more on formative assessment, generating low stakes, lots of low stakes, multiple choice quizzes that students can take multiple times in order to make sure that they're understanding the materials and can and can demonstrate that they've actually worked through the course resources. But it takes me forever to write good multiple choice questions. I'm not good at it when I have a blank page. And so I like using these tools to give me a bank of starting questions to begin with. You can, as Brian mentioned, pitch these questions at different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And it's a big time saver for me to just be able to generate on whatever content that I want a large bank of questions. You've got a couple of different approaches here. One is to just ask the language models, the large language models, to generate a series of multiple choice questions over a well-defined field. Like for this first prompt here, as a professor of an introductory course on astrobiology, you'll notice that there's a theme in all of my prompts today. For non-majors, please generate 10 multiple choice questions with correct answers identified that will assess student understanding of the properties of life. That topic is so generic, so general, and so fundamental to search for life in the universe that I'm not bothering to point this at a particular resource that I've had my students look at. Whatever I'm having the students work through, they should be able to address these questions about the basic properties of life that are going to be generated from the AI. The other approach is to focus your AI on specific resources that you're having your students look at so that you can create this question bank that you can use for reading readiness of low stakes formative assessment. When you are working on this, you have to realize that some of these large language models can't access the internet. So Gemini does, whereas other models like Claude from Anthropic don't. And so I've fed these prompts into both of those, the two tools that I tend to use most often. But in the case of Gemini, it could go straight out to that website and look at the content, generate questions. Whereas for Claude, I had to capture the content from the website. It's a openly published content on the web and feed it into Claude as an attached file. And I also want to show, the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So let me pop over here. We go into, I guess I'll go into Gemini first. This astrobiology basics chat that I had with him so please write 10 multiple choice questions based on the content of this web page, focused at the remembering level, really low baseline levels of plumes. And if you read through these questions, and notice I also say, well, and provide the correct answer for each. Okay. And so which of the following is not a concern? Astrobiology is concerned with these things. So these are all very factual, remembering kinds of questions. I would go through these. I would throw out a bunch of these. I said, no, that's really not what I want in my question bank. Or I could take one of these as a starter point and modify the correct answer and the distractors. And it gives me here the correct answers. You'll see that if I do the same thing, but at the analysis level, then the questions are not really just straight remembering. But you also notice I did not tell Gemini to provide the correct answer. And so if you look through, first of all, it only gave me 5 questions instead of 10, and it did not give me the correct answer. So you have to be a little bit careful. Same thing in Claude. Astrobiology multiple choice questions. I ran the prompt through first and it gave me does not have internet access. This is from 1998 though, so it's probably already in the training database, but I went through and did the series again by attaching a file with the content. Again, remembering, so these are very straightforward, factual kinds of questions and answers. And with the analysis level, they're more requiring the students to bring pieces of information together and making inferences. So let's go back. So I think this approach can really help us. The more we can focus our students on recall, remembering, and active learning, studies have shown that the students just go back and reread the materials, and if they highlight, that's not going to make it stick. Learning that stick requires the students to actually do something, and these low stakes formative assessments are a good way for that to happen. Going to turn it over to Brian now, who's going to tell us a little bit about some of these approaches and tools that are actually being developed into Brightspace.
Before I get to that, I want to just mention a couple of things. One is I've seen multiple examples of people using the large language models. I think they were using ChatGPT. The one I can remember most was using ChatGPT, but they were able to get it to format the response in the Brightspace question import format. So you can actually tell it to generate in a specific format. If I'm able to, I mean, I don't remember exactly. It was a YouTube video, I believe, that I had seen. And we know firsthand that if you provide instruction on how you would like the large language model to output its results, it can follow it. So that you can use that to save yourself some extra time. So that it's just like one big copy paste into Brightspace, and then you can import it and use them within Brightspace.
Well, I want to know about that, Brian.
um, so yeah, it's just something. It's something that you would add near the end of your prompt. You would just say please structure your response in the following format. And I believe in the case that I saw, I think they just referenced like the Brightspace question import format. I think that the language model had enough understanding of that. If not,
Yeah.
you can just be more explicit and provide some examples of what it looks like based on our templates. Now, in terms of generative AIs is a bit of a thing, and we at D2L have been looking at how can we incorporate generative AI in a way that will be helpful to our users. We started out by targeting the instructors, the professors, the instructional designers, the course creators, and we looked at using generative AI to generate formative assessments. We're doing that in our Creator Plus offering, which I'll show you in a second. And then I have a short video also talking about how to generate quiz questions. And here, one of the differences is that we're moving from formative assessment to allowing for more of a summative assessment and incorporating Bloom's taxonomy into it as well. And then what we'll be releasing by the end of May, by I think May actually, it'll be in the May to June timeframe. Is the idea is a feature for generating ideas for assignments and discussions. So first, I'll show you the generating practices. Oh, what am I sharing? Are you seeing my browser? Hang on a second. Let me try that one more time. Okay.
Yeah, we see
So
fundamental.
here I have a topic in my my unit of introduction to microeconomics. It's got just a big block, a lot of text. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it. And when I get to the edit screen, you'll see here we have a call out that you can use. You can try AI assisted question generation in practices. So I'm going to choose a location for I'm going to do near the bottom. And I'm going to insert a practice. We have a few different options, and you can see we've indicated which ones allow for using generative AI to provide a suggestion. And I'm going to go with multiple choice. From here, again, it lets me know that I can generate a question. When I click on that, it gives me a few sort of tidbits, right? So it's letting me know this is the text that it's going to use. If I want to tailor it to just a portion of the content here, I can delete portions of the text and it will only use what's left. But anything that you do here doesn't actually impact your content. This is just to help support the generation of a question. So what I'm going to do here is I'll click on generate question. And in this case, we're using OpenAI. And it's gone out and it's going to be generating a question for me. Along with a correct answer. So we see here, what is the concept that represents the value of, next best alternative, the most forgotten when a choice is made, opportunity cost. I can test it out over here. And when I'm ready, I can insert that into my content. And if I save that, you'll see that in my topic here, I now have that question embedded. So you can have those formative assessments kind of directly you can use it directly within your content to help learners test their knowledge before they move on. Now, I next wanted to show you what we have in terms of um, sharing a or being able to generate questions within quizzing. So let me just share. Apologies. So here we are in a course. And I can go into quizzing and I can go into the question library, and we've added the ability to generate questions in here, and you can do that really at any level of your question library. Again, we have a call out letting you know that you can use AI to help you. You can do it based on specific course content. And what we're going to actually do here is choose a specific topic that we want to use as the source of the information for these questions. I'm going to ask it to generate, we're going to generate 3 questions that we can use. And when we click on generate, it will go off and it will generate those questions for us. Now, one of the things that we believe in is making sure we want a human in the loop, right? We're not looking for generative AI to replace people. We want to use it to help people with what they're trying to accomplish. And so we've incorporated a bit of a review workflow. So here we have 3 questions that it's generated. We see that they've all been tagged right now as not being reviewed. And then I can quickly and easily go through them, look at them, decide whether or not I want to keep it. So this first one I'm going to keep. This next one I've decided that I don't like it, so I'm going to discard it. And then I'm going to keep the third one as well. And so what we're left with is 2 of those 3 questions. I've only chosen to retain 2, and we've marked them as reviewed. So that as you work through that process, if there's any others that you need to still review. And then if we go back into that particular section in the question library, you'll see that the questions have been added successfully to the course. Um, I don't have anything to show you in terms of the generating ideas for assignments and discussions, but it follows a similar sort of workflow where you'd be going into assignments or discussions, and you could click on the generate button to generate a potential assignment, a prompt, or a discussion prompt.
Okay. Let me go back to share screen. So I hope that as we go through these examples, you can just get some ideas about how these tools could fit into your workflow. Just wanted to throw out at maybe a somewhat higher level some additional ideas so that we have make sure we have time for questions. Um, Lesson plans is a place where you can get some help, again, going from a blank page to having something to begin with. So I've got a couple of different prompts here. Please create a 100-minute lesson plan on the potential for life on Venus for an introductory astrobiology course. That's a very generic, you're really only specifying the length of the lesson plan. As opposed to this one that is much more specific in terms of what the lesson is going to be covering. This is looking specifically at recent work that's been looking at the atmosphere of Venus, looking at environmental conditions, habitability, different kinds of extremophiles. Again, specifying lessons should be 100 minutes long. We go into, I do want to compare Claude and Gemini for these, and I won't go through both prompts, but let me just um, go back to potential. Let's look at the more detailed prompt. The habitability zones for extremophiles in Venus's atmosphere. The way Claude approached this is to just give you a kind of a breakdown. Okay, well, you got 100 minutes. Here are a series of topics that you might want to consider covering in that 100 minutes. Here are some issues within each of those topics. And so this is okay. But in this case, I want to point to at Gemini, which did, and for the same prompt, gives this for a lesson plan. You know, it's reflecting the target audience. It describes learning outcomes for this lesson plan, talks about materials that you might want to consider, including linking out to this video. 100 minutes. Here is how it's broken it down. Much more thought about instructional approaches and so forth. So I guess the main reason that I wanted to show the difference between the two here is that it is worth exploring different AI tools and figuring out for which part of the workflow you want to get assistance with, which of the tools works better. So if I'm going to be planning lesson plans throughout the course, probably going to spend more time in Gemini than in Claude, even though I use Claude more regularly for just kind of generalized chats and questions, because of by default it's coming back with much more structure, much more detail here. Just point out this one particular Gemini also seems to have a little bit more personality around its lesson plans, about talking about venturing to our scorching neighbor Venus. I don't know if it is drawing lesson plans more from K through 12 than maybe Claude is, but it is a little bit more focused on engagement. So again, it's worth plotting out or comparing different tools. As we talked about in Almanac, you can do lesson planning with Almanac as well, feeding in different instructional design frameworks. Quickly check the chat here. Okay. So some questions about practices that you've addressed, Brian. Good. Rubrics is also something that I struggle with. Basically, anything that takes a lot of narrative verbiage is a good place to look for help in from some of these AI tools. We're doing for time. Again, when you are getting rubrics, a couple things you want to think about. Whether you want to specify the criteria that you want in the rubric and have the AI generate a narrative for different levels of those criteria, or whether you want to leave that unspecified and have the AI tool come back with suggestions for what the criteria would be. In this case, I actually kind of like the idea of leaving things less specified, because I'm using this as a brainstorming tool, and oftentimes or sometimes I will get results back that will bring up things that I didn't think about. I thought, oh yeah, maybe I should. But they can handle analytic versus holistic rubrics. You could be very specific in terms of specifying the numbers of levels and point values. Really depends on how you want the rubric output structured. And so think I'll pop into Gemini for this. So you can see the prompt here. Oh, actually, I think I've got the prompt on the next. No. Yeah, please provide an analytical rubric. So not holistic, an analytical rubric for a digital storytelling project. Introductory astrobiology course, where the students must select a current topic and record a voice thread presentation describing this to their fellow classmates. So from that, Claude and Gemini came up with fairly similar things, a little bit different mix of criteria. So content accuracy, content depth, clarity and delivery, visual storytelling, technical proficiency, engagement. Many of these are kind of are probably the criteria that you would want. One thing about Gemini, if you do a lot of work with Google Docs, you have options to export any kind of material you get out of Gemini into a doc, or if it's a table, you can probably get it into Sheets very easy. So there's that tie-in of Gemini with other Google applications or Claude. Again, topic selection, content depth, clarity of explanation, organization and flow, creativity and engagement, a different suite of criteria. And you might mix and match between the two to come up with the criteria that you want for your rubric for your assignment. If instead you ask for a holistic rubric, then they're going to collapse. They're not going to, look at different criteria, but we'll just give for this assignment, what might be the hallmarks of an excellent excellent work on the part of the student on this assignment versus good versus satisfactory and so forth. So that's an area where you might play around with getting some help in putting your course together. And the last topic, so we have some time for questions. I think we've got some time to go through this. I think there's some potential for AI to help us with our research, whether it's research for our teaching for our classes or research for our scholarship. Probably aware that, as Brian has said, if you ask these large language models a question, they will give you an answer. That's what they're primed to do, even if they have to make up the answer. And this is the hallucinations, as Brian has mentioned. Even if the material that you're getting back from the large language models is accurate, oftentimes it's difficult to know where that material came from, because the large language models have just ingested so much content and looking at relationships from all this material to generate the response that they're providing. There are some ways to maybe track down well, I have gone to ChatGPT in early days and asked for a list of references. Oftentimes, many of those references don't exist because they're amalgamations, mixing and matching of real references that are in the field. So I think there's a lot of potential here, rather than the general language models, for some of these special purpose tools that have been tuned and targeted at specific domains of knowledge to help us here. And one that I've come across early in the work for the task force is Elicit. I think it's when I first came across it and was describing it to others, it's like a Google Scholar on steroids. And so I'll take just a minute to show Elicit. It's worth exploring, even if you're not right in the middle of designing a course. Again, there's a free version and a paid version. The free version is quite helpful just by itself. So again, with a lot of these specialized tools, the landscape is changing rapidly. If I had given a demo of Elicit a couple of months ago, it would not look the same because now they're organized around this concept of notebooks. And the first step in your research process is to ask a research question. So I had that prompt, please summarize recent research exploring the potential for life on Venus. Pop this in. It is going to go and look at actual real papers, which is, an advantage here. And it will, of course, take a long time in the middle of doing a presentation. Normally it doesn't take this long, but it will provide a list of the top matches to your research question. And the free version will take the 4 papers that, based on your research prompt and its textual analysis of the papers, that it marks as the 4 top papers. And it will give you a summary of those papers right at the top. You can, I'll leave this go for a little bit. You can look through all of the papers that comes back, not just the top 4, but all of them. You can select specific papers from that. Guess I should have done this notebook at a time. And so we may not wait for the results to come back, but once you have the resources that Elicit comes back with in response to your research prompt, then you can select all of them or select some of them and basically chat at those papers. And so if I had this list of papers about recent research on the potential for life on the universe, I could select them all and I could add a step where I'm asking a question like, please indicate which of these papers discusses the use of phosphine in the atmosphere as a biosignature. And it will go through and analyze those papers. You can take all the papers that are returned in the list and you can get the AI to summarize the main findings. It can, list the specific outcomes that were measured. It will, limitations, any of these things. If you want a summary of the study design for each of the papers that comes up in this list, you can add these to your output. And I'm just going to cancel out of here because we're obviously not going to get a response back in a timely fashion. But the tools like Elicit, and I'm sure there will be other tools, or there already are other tools that will support the research process, can get around this idea or these issues with general language models making things up in order to answer your question. And you can have access to real specific papers. So we'll share the slides, and you have our contact information. There is this, again, the link has been put in the chat, but let me put that link in the chat again. Really encourage folks to take advantage. Yeah, if Elicit had come back, you'd see what outputs. Just pop back in quickly. Nope, it's still turning. Not sure what's going on with it today. So with that, let me stop sharing. And we can go to, I know there were some questions that we hopefully dealt with in the chat. There was a question earlier about, course that is more focused on written work. It was a introductory writing course, I believe, and taught asynchronously. If the person who raised that wants to get on the mic and talk about it. It is an issue we dealt with quite early in the work of the task group. Yeah, Celeste, you had a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, thanks an awful lot. I hope you can hear me now. Um,
Yep.
the question I have, because I am teaching exclusively online async, and I'm teaching introductory writing composition courses, English 101, 102. And I've been doing this for several years, teaching online. I have had exactly one student who admitted using AI to generate part of her essay. And I have had many more that it's very, very obvious just from the language level and the sophistication that these students wrote the entire thing from an AI generated prompt.
Yep.
So I understand about the uh, advantages of using AI to help form and develop the course. But is there a way to have it so that the students will understand that using AI is not
Right.
the electronic version of having someone take your test for you?
So there's no magic bullet in this area. This is
Of course.
that the task group has struggled with quite a bit. Uh, Initially, once the AI models were on the scene, everyone was hopeful that there would be AI detectors that would solve all of our problems for us. And that's a lost cause. It's an arms race that the detectors are going to lose. And like I say,
If I could just interrupt one quick second, I do have all of my students put their essays in through the Turnitin enhanced part of the assignment. And Turnitin has developed an AI detector. Yeah, I know. Take it with a grain of salt. So I warn the students when I see this, and I've seen it for anywhere from 35 to 100% return. I say that there's indication that Turnitin has found that AI may have been used to generate this essay. I can't say it's definite because there is no hard and fast truth or proof. Uh, but I wasn't sure if anything had gotten better with the technology to
yeah,
help us along with this.
it's not going to get better. And I mean, AI Turnitin does a decent job in terms of matching for just originality, but all of these AI detectors have a very significantly high false positive rate. And studies have shown that the false positive rates are higher for non-native speakers and other groups that we might consider marginalized. And so there are equity issues with using some of these AI detectors. About the best advice I can provide is, as a faculty member, we need to think about what parts of our assignments where the actual learning is happening, and what are the other parts of the assignments that just get students to where they need to be to have the learning happen. And so having a conversation with our students saying, I expect all of you to come up with an idea, and maybe I know this doesn't scale well for an asynchronous online course. I'm going to be teaching my course asynchronously online myself. Everyone has to have a 10-minute conference with me to discuss your initial topic. After that, and we'll have a conversation about what makes sense for our class, we will decide that you can make use of these tools to help you brainstorm in this area, or to help you organize your references in MLA format, kind of the busy work stuff. But the more we can scaffold our assignments, the more we can have students give intermediate steps, the more we can target our assignments towards hyper-local, to the class, to the community, authentic learning kind of assessments, the less likely that they're going to be able to go out to ChatGPT and come up with some generic input that will fit the parameters of what you're having them really focus in on in the class. If you can have your writing assignments, have them analyze things that were discussed in the discussion forum, the previous week, you build on that. That's not going to be, in the training material for the large language models. So the more specificity, the more scaffolding, the more interactivity and steps along the way. Yeah, a student might be able to use an AI tool all the way through to get to the end, but at that point, it might be easier just to do the work. I don't think I've got anything better than that.
Actually, that suggestion about using content from discussion forums was a great idea.
And we are over time. I want to thank everyone. We'll capture what's going on in the chat. I know CPD will send the recording out. If you do have some last minute questions, put them into the chat before you sign off. And again, thanks to everyone. And Brian, I don't know if you have any last words.
Just I appreciate the opportunity to present both sort of what large language models can do, as well as what Brightspace, what we have in active beta right now, and some of the things that are coming later on. And I hope that this was helpful and useful to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Celeste, really quickly, one of the best suggestions I've heard for writing classes from a representative at the LSAT is having students complete it live in Google Docs, because you can look at their edit history and see if they paste large chunks of their essay or if they're actually writing it. So you just have to make it clear in your instructions that they have to write it in Google Docs, and that copying and pasting from other places is not appropriate.
Cool.
Okay, and then make sure that they make me give me editorial permissions to get in there.
Exactly.
Okay, another good idea. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Take care.